So I think Scotland deserves a choice, and that choice is this: take control of our own finances to build, grow and innovate our way to a better future, or allow Tories to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again and make the situation worse.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister chose earlier this week not to come before this Parliament to spell out her views on a referendum. Well, I choose to put this Parliament first. The Scottish Conservatives reject the proposal set out by the First Minister on Monday. A referendum cannot happen when the people of Scotland have not been given the opportunity to see how our new relationship with the European Union is working. And it should not take place when there is no clear political or public consent for it to happen. Our country does not want to go back to the divisions and uncertainty of the last few years. Another referendum campaign will not solve the challenges that this country will face. We don't want it. We don't need it. Why won't she listen?
First Minister.
Well, I was elected as First Minister less than a year ago.
Order.
They don't want to hear this. I was elected as First Minister a year ago with the highest constituency share of the vote in the history of devolution, on a manifesto commitment that said this Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if the Tories tried to drag us out of Europe against our will. That 46% share of the vote is 10 percentage points higher than the 36% share that the Tories used to have the EU referendum in the first place. And we hear from the Electoral Commission this morning that the vote share they may have got in the 2015 election was rather dodgy. But this Parliament has an independence majority in it as well. So Ruth Davidson says she wants to put this Parliament first. Well, let me issue this direct challenge to Ruth Davidson and to the Conservative Party. If on Wednesday next week this Parliament votes for an independence referendum to give the people of Scotland a choice over their own future, will the Conservatives respect the will of this Parliament, or are the Conservatives running scared?
Andrew Wilson is responsible for rebuilding the SNP's battered economic case for leaving the United Kingdom. This week it was reported that he told Nicola Sturgeon it could take up to 10 years for Scotland's economy to recover if we leave the UK. Does the First Minister think a lost decade is a price worth paying to drag Scotland out of the United Kingdom?
First Minister.
Well, the reports that appeared this week about the work of the Growth Commission were 100% wrong. Plain and simple, Andrew Wilson himself has said that. On the contrary to what was reported, the work of the Growth Commission is looking at how we get from the position we are in right now, saddled with a deficit created by Labour and Conservative governments down the generations, to a stronger and more sustainable future. And the question, I think, for Kezia Dugdale is this: is she happy to see Scotland locked in to Tory austerity, not just for the rest of this decade, but into the next decade as well? Is she happy to see Scotland at the mercy of Tory cut after Tory cut after Tory cut? Or this time, is she going to stand up for the right of this country to choose a better future for itself?
Kezia Dugdale.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister is so confident of the contents of that Growth Commission, she should publish it. But of course, we have been here before. SNP ministers assert one thing in public and admit another in private. We all remember John Swinney's leaked paper which warned of cuts to public services and to our pensions. And now we have Andrew Wilson. who has revealed in private what Nicola Sturgeon refuses to admit publicly, that leaving the UK would be devastating for Scotland's economy. It would mean even more cuts to schools and hospitals, and cuts to those most in need. The First Minister said this week she didn't want a fact-free debate. So let's start with one fact she can't deny. Isn't it the case that, according to her own government statistics, leaving the UK would mean £15 billion worth of extra cuts?
First Minister.
Well, the band is well and truly back together, isn't it? Tory and Labour combining again to talk this country down. Here's the reality. Scotland has a deficit created on Westminster's watch, and we have to deal with that deficit whether we are independent or not. Isn't it much better to have the tools and the powers of independence to deal with that deficit consistent with our own values and not Tory values? We face, if we are not independent, years and years and years of Tory austerity. I don't want that for my country, and I think it is shameful that Labour now back that for this country. But you know, Labour is just all over the place on this. They cannot even get their own story straight. We've got Kezia Dugdale telling us that Labour will vote against another referendum. Jeremy Corbyn comes and tells us that UK Labour will not vote against another referendum. No wonder Labour's new slogan is "We're divided enough."
Willie Rennie.
Is it possible that an independent Scotland could not only be outside the United Kingdom single market, but also outside the European single market too?
First Minister.
No, I want Scotland to be in the European Union. I want Scotland to be in the single market. And that's why I think it's important to give people in Scotland that choice. What we know right now, though, beyond any doubt, is that if Scotland doesn't become independent, we are not only out of the EU, but we will be out of the single market as well. By considering independence, of course, we give ourselves the ability to secure a relationship with Europe and, of course, to secure the jobs, the investment and the collaborations that depend on that. That is why giving people in Scotland the choice is so important.
Willie Rennie.
The First Minister dodged the question. It was a simple question. Could we be out of both single markets? And the answer is yes. And the reason is this. It is just as difficult to get into the European single market as full EU membership. All 27 EU members would need to agree. And we heard from the Spanish government again yesterday. So her route guarantees nothing. It's exactly the same hurdle. That's why the First Minister's plans could leave us outside of the UK and the EU single markets. If she thought a Conservative hard Brexit was going to be damaging, just wait for this. It is absurd to use the EU as an excuse for another referendum when there is no guarantee that Scotland could get back into the EU. She is sooking up to the Eurosceptics on her own side, while cynically selling out the pro-Europeans on the sly. Why can't she just admit that?
First Minister.
Well, of course, Willie Rennie spends most of his time sooking up to the Tories, so I'll take no lessons from him. But, you know, I really can't believe the brass neck with which Willie Rennie has just asked that question. Because remember, Willie Rennie is one of the politicians, Ruth Davidson's another one, Kezia Dugdale is another one, that in 2014 looked the people of Scotland in the eye and said, if you vote no in the referendum, your membership of the European Union is secure. And if you vote yes, Scotland will not be allowed in. And 2.5 years later, where this unionist alliance has contrived to make sure we are facing being taken out of the European Union against our will. They have the absolute temerity to stand up again and try to scaremonger that it's independence that is putting our EU membership at risk. It is absolutely breathtaking in its hypocrisy. And I'll tell you this, the people of Scotland will simply not fall for it again.